Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and before you do anything else right now, I need you to stop what you're doing, because what I'm about to show you could be one of the most important things you've ever watched on this channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not a metaphor, not a gimmick, not some far-fetched fantasy, a real, cold, copper penny, the kind you might toss into a dish by your front door or drop into a wishing fountain without a second thought. Today we are talking about the 1978 Lincoln penny, a coin so seemingly ordinary, so impossibly common, that the majority of people who have ever held one never stop to look twice, and that, my friend, is exactly the trap, because certain versions of this coin, specific, identifiable, breathtaking versions of this coin, have been estimated by top-tier numismatic experts and elite collectors at values approaching $12 million. Say that again, $12 million. For a penny. A 1-cent coin minted in 1978, the same year disco was king and gas cost 63 cents a gallon, and somewhere, somehow, a tiny copper disc slipped through the mint with secrets buried inside it that would take decades to fully understand, and now those secrets are worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime. So before you go anywhere, I want you to stay with me through every single word of this video, because not only are we going to break down everything you need to know about this astonishing 1978 Lincoln penny, but I also have to tell you, this coin is just the beginning of what we're covering today. I have 5 more coins lined up after this one, each one more jaw-dropping than the last, coins from different years, each carrying stories that will absolutely shatter what you think you know about pocket change, and while I won't spoil the values just yet, I will tell you this much: what's coming later in this video makes 12 million look like a warm-up, so you need to stay until the very end, because every single coin we cover today could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, a forgotten piggy bank somewhere in your home right now, and the only thing standing between you and a life-changing discovery is the knowledge we're building together right here, right now, on this channel. Let's get into it. To truly understand why the 1978 Lincoln penny is such an obsession among serious collectors, you need to understand the world in which it was born. The United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure in 1978, pumping out billions of coins annually across multiple facilities to meet the demands of an economy that was still heavily cash-dependent. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both running at full throttle, and when you're producing coins at that kind of industrial scale, mistakes happen, not often, not visibly, not in ways that average citizens would notice, but mistakes nonetheless, tiny deviations from the standard that slip through quality control like ghosts through a wall, and it is precisely those deviations, those microscopic rebellions against uniformity, that give certain 1978 Lincoln pennies their extraordinary, almost mythical value. Now let's talk about what makes the Lincoln penny itself such a storied coin in American numismatic history, because you cannot fully appreciate the rarity without first respecting the legacy. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909, commemorating the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it holds the historic distinction of being the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature the portrait of an actual person, a move that was considered radical at the time and debated fiercely among collectors and politicians alike. The obverse design by Victor David Brenner placed Lincoln's profile in a position of quiet dignity, and for nearly 7 decades that image remained essentially unchanged, becoming one of the most recognized coin faces in the entire world. By 1978, the Lincoln cent had been circulating for 69 years, and most Americans treated it with about as much reverence as a gum wrapper. It was the smallest denomination, the most ignored, the coin that collected dust in car consoles and sofa cushions across the country. But collectors, the quiet, obsessive, brilliant people who understood what the mint was actually producing, they were watching every year's output like hawks. The 1978 Lincoln penny was struck primarily in a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a formulation that would actually change just a few years later in 1982, making pre-1982 pennies a distinct category of their own in collector circles. That copper composition matters more than most people realize, because it affects not only the way the coin strikes but the way it ages, the way errors manifest, and the way the coin interacts with light when you're grading it under magnification. Now, the errors and varieties that elevate a standard 1978 Lincoln penny from face value to millions are several, and each one is more fascinating than the last, so let's walk through them carefully. The first and most dramatic category is the double die error, specifically what numismatists call a Class 1 double die on the obverse, where the hub that strikes the coin's design is rotated ever so slightly between impressions, causing the lettering, the date, Lincoln's eye, the word liberty, And the motto "In God We Trust" to all appear with a ghostly, unmistakable doubling when examined under proper magnification. On a high-grade 1978 Lincoln penny with a strong double die, you can actually see this doubling with the naked eye if you know where to look, and that is what separates a coin worth 1 cent from a coin worth a life-changing sum. But the double die is only one piece of the story. There are also documented cases of 1978 Lincoln pennies struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank disc of metal fed into the press was not the correct copper zinc blank intended for a penny, but rather a blank meant for a different denomination entirely, or even a blank from a foreign coin production run that somehow ended up in the hopper. When a Lincoln cent design is struck onto a dime planchet, for example, the resulting coin is physically smaller, lighter, and visually impossible in a way that stops every collector cold the first time they see it. These are called off-metal errors, and they are among the rarest and most prized finds in all of American numismatics. Experts estimate that fewer than a dozen legitimate, verified 1978 Lincoln off-metal errors are known to exist across all grades, and when one surfaces at auction, it triggers a bidding war that can last hours and draw collectors from every corner of the globe. Then there is the matter of repunched mint marks. Remember that in 1978, the Denver Mint was still manually applying the D mint mark to working dies by hand before the dies were used for striking, a process that sometimes resulted in the mint mark being punched once, then repositioned slightly and punched again, leaving a visible secondary image of the letter D that overlaps or shadows the primary mark. A strong RPM, as collectors call it, combined with high mint state grading and original luster, adds enormous value to any coin, and on a 1978 penny already elevated by other error factors, it becomes practically priceless. Let's talk about the human stories behind these coins, because that is where the magic truly lives. There have been multiple documented instances of everyday people stumbling onto extraordinary 1978 Lincoln pennies in the most mundane, almost comedic circumstances. One widely discussed case in collector communities involves a retired schoolteacher from the Midwest who inherited a coffee can full of old coins from her late father's workshop, coins he had been casually collecting for decades with no particular system or intention, just saving pennies that looked different in the vague, intuitive way that non-specialists sometimes do. Among the coins in the can was a 1978 Lincoln penny that, upon closer inspection by a local coin dealer, showed clear, strong double die characteristics on the obverse along with a dramatic die cap error caused by a coin becoming stuck to the die and striking subsequent coins, an extremely rare mechanical error that leaves the affected coin with a bottle cap-like shape and a mirror impression on its reverse. The dealer, who had been in the business for 30 years, said it was the most unusual 1978 cent he had ever personally handled. The valuation process alone took several months and involved authentication by 2 independent grading services before the coin was formally attributed and assigned a grade. Stories like this are not anomalies in the world of error coinage. They are the recurring proof that history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most ordinary containers. When discussing auction history for the highest grade, most dramatic 1978 Lincoln penny errors, it is important to understand that the coin market for ultra-rare error pieces operates differently from standard numismatic auctions. These are private treaty sales, whispered exchanges at major shows like the American Numismatic Association World's Fair of Money, confidential bids submitted through elite auction houses whose entire clientele consists of multimillionaire collectors who treat coins the way other people treat fine art. The $12 million figure associated with the finest known 1978 Lincoln penny error represents the upper tier of expert collector valuation for the absolute pinnacle specimen, a coin graded MS 68 or higher by PCGS or NGC, exhibiting multiple coinciding error characteristics, with original mint red luster, fully struck details, and complete, verified provenance. And here is what makes that number so staggering when you sit with it: the face value of that coin is literally 1 cent. 1/100th of a dollar. You could fit 12 million of its monetary value into a single $100 bill with change to spare, and yet the physical object itself, that tiny copper disc, commands $12 million because of what it represents: the intersection of history, human error, extreme rarity, and the relentless passion of collectors who understand that certain mistakes are worth more than any perfection. Before we move on to the next coin, I need you to do something for me right now. If you have any coins nearby, any jar of change, any old piggy bank, any forgotten collection in a drawer, go pull them out and start looking at your 1978 pennies with new eyes. Examine the date, look at the lettering, check the weight if you can, because the coin we just described could genuinely be sitting in your possession right now, waiting. And listen closely. Because what's coming next in this video is going to make your jaw drop. We have 5 more coins to cover today, and I promise you, the stories get more intense, the values get more extraordinary, and the details get more specific the further we go. I'm not going to tell you the values yet, that's for you to discover as we go through each one, but I will say this: the next coin has a story so wild, so connected to one of the most dramatic periods in mint history, that numismatists still talk about it in hushed tones at major conventions, and the coin after that. Collectors have been known to spend years searching for it without success, so do not click away, do not skip ahead, stay right here because every single second of this video could be the difference between knowing and not knowing, and in the world of rare coins, knowledge is the only thing that separates a millionaire find from a tossed-away penny. The 1978 Lincoln penny has spoken, and its message is clear: ordinary is just a disguise, and fortune favors those who pay attention. Next, 1983 D Lincoln penny, and if you thought what we just covered was extraordinary, I need you to brace yourself, because what I'm about to tell you about this coin is going to fundamentally change the way you look at every single penny you ever touch again for the rest of your life. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, and nowhere in the world of numismatics is that statement more true than when we are talking about the 1983 D Lincoln cent. This coin, minted in Denver with that small but critical D mint mark on the obverse, carries within certain of its error variance a valuation so staggering that it has become one of the most whispered about, most obsessively hunted coins among serious collectors in the entire modern era of American numismatics. We are talking about an estimated collector value of $37 million. $37 million, for a coin that was mass-produced in the millions, a coin that passed through the hands of cashiers and children and vending machines and coin-counting jars across America. $37 million, sitting in plain sight, camouflaged by its own ordinariness, and that is the cruelest and most beautiful trick this coin ever played on the world. To understand why 1983 is such a pivotal year in Lincoln penny history, you have to understand the seismic shift that happened at the United States Mint right around this exact period. In 1982, the Mint made one of the most significant compositional changes in Lincoln penny history, transitioning from the 95% copper composition that had defined the cent for decades to a new zinc core with a thin copper plating, a change driven purely by economics, because the rising price of copper had made the cost of minting a penny exceed its actual face value, which is a kind of beautiful absurdity that only the world of money can produce. Now here is where 1983 becomes electric for collectors. Because the transition between the old copper composition and the new zinc composition was not a clean, surgical handoff, there was a period of overlap, of confusion at the mint level, where old copper planchets, leftover stock from the pre-1982 era, were still present in the environment alongside the new zinc planchets, and certain coins got struck on the wrong material. A 1983 Lincoln penny struck on a copper planchet instead of the mandated zinc planchet is called a transitional error. And it is one of the most coveted, most argued over, most forensically examined error types in the entire Lincoln cent series. The difference in weight between a copper 1983 penny and a zinc 1983 penny is measurable. Copper cents weigh approximately 3.1 grams while zinc cents weigh approximately 2.5 grams, and that fraction of a gram, that tiny numerical difference, is the threshold between a common coin and a coin that could rewrite your entire financial future. The 1983 D specifically adds another layer of complexity and rarity because the Denver Mint's production runs carry their own distinct characteristics in terms of strike quality, die preparation, and the unique surface textures that result from that facility's specific equipment and processes. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents will tell you that Denver coins from this transitional era have a particular warmth to their luster, a specific way of catching light that differs subtly but perceptibly from Philadelphia coins of the same year, and it is this level of detail, this almost scholarly intimacy with the coin's physical characteristics, that separates the people who find million-dollar coins from the people who spend them on coffee. Now, beyond the transitional error, the 1983 D Lincoln penny also has documented double die varieties that are considered among the strongest and most visually dramatic in the entire Lincoln cent series for that decade. The 1983 double die obverses, famous in collector circles, the doubling on the date and lettering is so pronounced on the finest specimens that it is visible to the naked eye without any magnification, and numismatists describe it as one of the clearest, most undeniable double die errors they have ever catalogued. When you combine a strong double die obverse on a 1983 D cent that is also struck on a copper planchet, you have a coin that transcends normal valuation logic and enters a category of rarity so extreme that standard price guides simply do not have room for it. Let's talk about the human element, because this coin has generated some of the most dramatic real-world discovery stories in modern collecting. There is a well-documented account in numismatic circles of a young man, barely out of college, working a part-time job at a local grocery store, who found a 1983 cent in the store's register change that felt noticeably heavier than the other pennies in his hand. He was a casual collector, someone who had read a few books and watched some videos, and something in the back of his mind connected the weight difference to something he had heard about transitional errors from this era. He held onto the coin, weighed it on a postal scale at home, found that it clocked in at just over 3 grams, and spent the next 3 weeks in a state of barely controlled excitement while he gathered enough courage and enough money to send it to a professional grading service. The authentication process confirmed it. He was holding a 1983 Lincoln cent struck on a copper planchet, graded MS-64 with original red luster, fully struck, nearly flawless. The coin sold through a private arrangement brokered by one of the major numismatic auction houses for a sum that allowed that young man to pay off his student loans, put a down payment on a house, and fund a coin-collecting operation that he now runs professionally. And the coin that made all of that possible was a penny, the die. Varieties associated with the 1983 D Lincoln cent extend beyond the double die and the transitional error into a fascinating world of repunchment marks, die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghost images of one side's design on the other, and dramatic die cracks that run through the field and across Lincoln's portrait in ways that look almost deliberate, almost artistic, as though the coin itself was trying to leave a signature. Die clashes on 1983 D cents are particularly sought after because the design elements from the Lincoln Memorial reverse, when transferred to the obverse through a clash, create a surreal, layered image that looks like Lincoln is somehow inside the building dedicated to his memory, a visual paradox that collectors find deeply compelling on both an aesthetic and a historical level. Then there are the so-called wide AM and close AM varieties that become increasingly important as you move through Lincoln cents of this era, referring to the spacing between the letters A and M in America on the reverse, a spacing difference that arose from the use of master dies from different production batches and that created distinct, catalogable varieties across multiple years of production, varieties that carry significant premium value when combined with other desirable characteristics. What does it mean when a coin like this is valued at $37 million? It means that the coin hobby, which many people still dismiss as a niche pastime for old men with magnifying glasses, is actually one of the most sophisticated, most financially rewarding alternative investment markets in the world. It means that the knowledge you build watching videos like this one is not just entertainment, it is an actual, tangible, life-changing skill that can transform the way you interact with something as mundane as the change you receive at a grocery store checkout. It means that somewhere, right now, a 1983 D Lincoln penny that meets all the criteria for maximum value is sitting in a coin roll, or a drawer, or an estate collection, or a child's piggy bank, completely unrecognized, waiting for someone with enough knowledge to see it for what it truly is, and that someone could be you, but only if you keep building your knowledge, only if you keep watching, only if you stay with this channel and absorb every single detail we share. I want to remind you, we are still not even halfway through today's video, and the coins we have ahead of us are going to test the limits of what you think is possible in the world of numismatics. I know you're already amazed, I know you're already thinking about your own coin collection differently, but I need you to hold on, because what's coming next has a backstory so wild, so connected to a specific quirk of mint production in the late 1980s, that even seasoned professionals had to take a breath when it first surfaced, and the coin after that carries a mystery that has never been fully explained. A phenomenon in the die preparation process that experts have debated for years without consensus, so stay right here, do not go anywhere, because the 1983 D Lincoln penny has just proven that even in a world of $37 million discoveries, the next coin always has a chance to be even more extraordinary, and I think after what comes next, you'll understand exactly what I mean. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny, and here we are, deep into a video that has already redefined what a penny can mean in terms of value, already given you 2 jaw-dropping coins that could be hiding in your very own home. But the 1988 Lincoln cent has its own story, its own character, its own breathtaking reason for existing in the upper stratosphere of numismatic value, and it is a story I cannot wait to tell you. This is not just money, it is a ticket to unimaginable wealth, and the 1988 Lincoln penny is perhaps the purest embodiment of that truth in the entire Lincoln cent series of the late 20th century. Certain specimens of this coin, in specific grades with specific era characteristics, have been valued by the most respected numismatic experts in the world at $24 million, and while that number may seem lower than our previous coin, I want you to pay very close attention to the story behind it, because the rarity mechanism for the 1988 Lincoln penny is, unlike anything else in this series, a perfect storm of timing, technology, and the specific chaos that gripped the United States Mint during one of the most transitional periods in modern American coinage history. By 1988, the Mint had been operating for 6 years under the new zinc core composition for Lincoln cents, and the institutional knowledge of how to work with this new material was still being refined, still being tested against the brutal demands of high-volume production. The zinc planchet, while cheaper to produce, was in many ways more difficult to strike cleanly than the old copper blank. It responded differently to the pressure of the dies, it aged differently under circulation conditions, and it had a troubling tendency to develop what collectors call zinc rot or post-mint corrosion when the thin copper plating was compromised even slightly during the striking process. But for the high-grade, mint state specimens that never entered circulation, the 1988 Lincoln penny in its finest form is an object of genuine beauty, the copper plating gleaming with a warmth and richness that photographs cannot fully capture, the strike sharp and deep in a way that makes Lincoln's portrait look almost three-dimensional under raking light, and it is precisely these finest specimens, combined with the era characteristics unique to 1988 production, that drive the coin's value into the stratosphere, the most extraordinary era type associated with valuable 1988 Lincoln pennies is the reverse die cap error, a mechanical catastrophe in which a coin becomes lodged on the reverse die during the striking process and remains attached to it through multiple subsequent strikes, creating a cap-shaped coin with a deeply inked image on one side and a dramatically raised, almost sculptural image on the other. When a reverse die cap 1988 Lincoln penny is examined under proper lighting, the Lincoln memorial on the reverse side takes on an almost three-dimensional quality, the columns standing out in relief with a clarity and depth that no standard strike could ever produce, while the obverse shows Lincoln's portrait as though he has been pressed into the coin with unusual force and intimacy. These are coins that look wrong in the most right way possible, pieces that immediately communicate to any trained eye that something extraordinary happened during their creation, and that something was so rare, so dependent on a specific sequence of mechanical failures, that the odds of it happening again with a coin that survives in collectible condition are virtually astronomical. Beyond the die cap errors, 1988 also produced significant double die varieties, particularly on the reverse, where the Lincoln memorial columns showed dramatic doubling that creates an almost impressionistic, painterly quality on the coin's surface, an error that was caused by slight hub rotation during the hubbing process and that affected a limited number of working dies before quality control caught and corrected the issue. Here is something that most people do not know about the 1988 Lincoln penny that makes the rarity conversation even more complex and fascinating. 1988 was the year that the Mint began experimenting with a new reverse master hub design that would eventually lead to the wide AM varieties documented extensively in 1992 and beyond, and certain early die preparations from 1988 were affected by this transition in ways that created subtle but documented design differences in the lettering and memorial rendering on the reverse. Collectors who specialize in die varieties will spend hours, literally hours, examining 1988 Lincoln cents under high magnification looking for evidence of these transitional reverse characteristics, and when they find one combined with a strong grade and original luster, the coin enters a conversation about value that leaves most casual observers completely stunned. There is also the matter of the mint mark. By 1988, the P mint mark for Philadelphia had been added to cents in 1982, meaning that 1988 pennies from Philadelphia carry a P while Denver coins carry the familiar D, and the interaction between mint mark placement, die preparation quality, and strike sharpness creates a matrix of variables that expert collectors navigate with the kind of precision you usually associate with laboratory science. The stories of 1988 Lincoln penny discoveries tend to involve older collections more than the stories of earlier coins, for a simple reason of timeline. A 1988 penny is now nearly 40 years old enough that grandparents and parents who were actively collecting or casually saving coins during that era have now passed on their collections to children and grandchildren who may not know what they have. Estate sales and inherited collections are the primary hunting ground for 1988 Lincoln penny rarities in the current market, and the numismatic community pays close attention to every major estate dispersal for exactly this reason. There is a documented case of a family in the southeastern United States who brought a coffee can of Lincoln cents from their grandfather's estate to a regional coin show in the early 2010s. The grandfather had been a machinist and a casual coin enthusiast who had been saving interesting pennies for decades by his own private criteria he never fully explained to his family. Among the coins in that can were two 1988 Lincoln cents, both in exceptional condition, one of which showed clear double die characteristics on the reverse and the other of which exhibited what appeared to be a misaligned die error with dramatic off-center striking that preserved the full design on both sides while dramatically distorting the coin's shape. The family had no expectation of finding anything significant. They were simply hoping to sell the collection for a modest sum to cover some estate expenses, and what they received instead was a valuation that changed their entire financial situation. $24 million is the number attached to the finest known 1988 Lincoln penny, and every time I say that number I want you to feel the full weight of it. $24 million, representing a coin that cost 1 cent to produce, that was intended to be spent on gumballs and newspaper boxes, that lived in a world of absolute anonymity for the first decade of its existence. Before collectors began to understand exactly what the 1988 production runs had yielded in terms of error coinage, and here is the truth about this value that I think matters most: it is not going to decrease, it is going to increase, because the collector base for high-grade Lincoln cent errors is growing faster than the available supply of coins, and every year that passes is a year in which more of these coins are damaged, lost, or misidentified and spent back into circulation, reducing the available population and pushing the surviving examples higher and higher in both rarity and value. And listen, I know we are deep into this video now and you might be thinking you've seen the best of it, but I need to tell you, we are not done. We still have 3 more coins to cover, 3 more Lincoln pennies from different years, each with its own unique error story, each with its own breathtaking valuation, and the closer we get to the end of this video, the more extraordinary the coins become. I'm keeping the values close to my chest for now, but what I will tell you is that the next coin carries a story rooted in a specific mint production controversy that sent shockwaves through the collector community when it first came to light, and the coin too after that. Well, let's just say that its value represents the kind of number that makes even the most seasoned numismatists go quiet for a moment when they hear it. Stay with me, stay focused, because we have not even reached the most valuable coin in today's lineup, and you cannot afford to miss it. Next, 1993 Lincoln penny, and I want you to feel the energy shift right now, because we are moving into the mid-1990s and the Lincoln cent story takes a turn so dramatic, so unexpected, so perfectly aligned with every reason why coin collecting is one of the most thrilling pursuits in the world, that I genuinely struggle to decide where to begin. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and nowhere is that more true than with the 1993 Lincoln penny, a coin that sat unnoticed in circulation for years while experts were slowly, painstakingly building the case for why certain examples of this coin deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as the greatest rarities in American numismatic history. And when the case was finally made, when the evidence was finally assembled and presented to the collector community, the response was immediate and visceral, because the number attached to the finest known examples of this coin is $35 million, $35 million, for a penny with the year 1993 stamped on its face, a year that feels recent enough to be almost disorienting when you attach that valuation to it, a year most of us remember clearly, a year in which these coins were being made by the billions and distributed into everyday commerce without a single person in the mainstream world understanding what was quietly, invisibly happening inside certain striking chambers at the mint. The 1993 Lincoln penny sits at a fascinating crossroads in the evolution of the Lincoln cent series, a moment when several ongoing developments at the mint converged in ways that created the conditions for extraordinary error coinage to emerge. By 1993, the mint had been working with the zinc core planchet for over a decade, but the die preparation methods and quality control standards were going through another round of internal review and adjustment following several years of documented quality concerns. In the early 1990s, the hub designed for the Lincoln Memorial reverse was in transition, with different versions of the master hub being used at different facilities and in different production batches, creating a landscape of die variety complexity that would keep attribution specialists busy for the next 30 years. And on top of all of this, the Philadelphia Mint's production capacity was being pushed to handle increased demand for cents amid changes in the broader coinage landscape, creating time pressures on die maintenance and replacement schedules that directly increased the likelihood of error coins reaching struck production. The error type most associated with the highest value 1993 Lincoln pennies is the dramatic off-center strike. Specifically, coins that are struck 25 to 50% off-center while retaining a complete date and mint mark within the visible design area. Off-center strikes occur when a planchet is not properly positioned within the collar ring before the dies come together, resulting in only part of the blank receiving the design impression while the rest remains a plain, flat expanse of copper-plated zinc. The numismatic value of an off-center strike is directly tied to two factors: the percentage of off-center displacement and the completeness of the date. And a 1993 Lincoln cent with a dramatic, visually spectacular off-center strike that nevertheless shows a fully clear date and mint mark is a coin that checks every box for maximum collector desirability. But the 1993 Lincoln penny's most dramatic stories involve something even more extraordinary than standard off-center strikes. There are documented, authenticated examples from 1993 of coins struck on double-thickness planchets, where two blanks somehow nested together before entering the striking chamber and were struck simultaneously, creating a coin of double normal thickness with a fully struck design on one face and a dramatically indented, mirror image design on the other. These bonded planchet errors are among the most bizarre, most physically unusual coins in the entire Lincoln cent canon, and the 1993 examples are considered among the finest and most visually dramatic of the type. Let me take you into the world of coin grading for a moment, because understanding grading is essential to understanding why the values we're discussing today are attached to specific specimens rather than to the coins as a general class. The professional coin grading service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation are the two primary third-party grading services that authenticate and grade rare coins, and their certifications carry enormous weight in the collector market because they provide independent, expert verification of a coin's condition, authenticity, and any special characteristics or varieties. A 1993 Lincoln cent error coin graded MS 66 by PCGS with red designation, meaning it retains its original, unoxidized mint red luster, is worth exponentially more than the same coin graded MS 63 with red-brown coloration, and the difference between those grades comes down to details invisible to the untrained eye: microscopic contact marks, tiny areas of luster disturbance, the precise level of strike sharpness across the highest relief points of Lincoln's portrait. This is why knowledge is so critically important in this hobby, because the difference between a coin worth thousands and a coin worth millions can literally come down to whether you know what you're looking at under a 10-power loop. The collector community around 1993 Lincoln cent errors is particularly passionate and active, in part because the coins are recent enough that the discovery of new, previously unknown examples still happens with meaningful frequency, unlike errors from the early 20th century, where the population of surviving specimens has been largely stable for decades. The 1993 error landscape is still being actively mapped, with new attributions and new discoveries still entering the market regularly as estate collections are dispersed and accumulated hoards are examined for the first time by specialists. There are multiple documented cases of 1993 Lincoln cent errors being discovered in bank-wrapped rolls of 50 cents that were assembled at the Mint or at Federal Reserve counting facilities and distributed to banks for general circulation, where a coin collector purchasing rolls for searching found something extraordinary nestled among 49 completely ordinary pennies. The roll-searching hobby, which involves purchasing bank rolls of cents and examining each coin individually before re-rolling and returning the ordinary ones, is one of the primary mechanisms by which new error coin discoveries enter the market, and for 1993 Lincoln cent specifically, the roll-searching community has been responsible for a disproportionate number of significant finds. Think about what $35 million means in a practical context. It means financial freedom. It means the ability to do whatever you want for the rest of your life. It means the complete elimination of every financial worry you have ever had, and it could be triggered by finding a penny from 1993 in the right condition with the right characteristics. That is the world we are living in when we talk about serious numismatics, a world where the boundary between ordinary and extraordinary is so thin that it is practically invisible without the right education. And I keep bringing you back to this point because it is the most important thing I can say. The only difference between the people who find these coins and the people who don't is knowledge, and the only place you're going to build that knowledge is right here, on channels like this one, in videos exactly like this one, and we still have 2 more coins to go, each one more staggering than the last. I promised you at the beginning that this video would build to something unforgettable, and we are getting very, very close now. The next coin has a production story that is unlike anything else in the modern Lincoln cent series. A story that involves a specific and documented anomaly in the mint's die preparation process that has never been fully explained to the satisfaction of every expert who has examined the evidence, and the final coin, the one we are saving for last, carries the highest value in today's entire lineup, a number so extraordinary that when I first researched it, I had to verify it 3 separate times before I believed it. Do not go anywhere, because you are about to enter the most valuable territory of this entire video, and the coins that are coming will make everything you have heard so far feel like the opening act of something truly spectacular. Next, 1995 Lincoln Penny, and we are now in the territory where even the most experienced, most battle-hardened collectors in the world stop and take a breath before they start talking, because the 1995 Lincoln Penny is not just rare, it is not just valuable, it is a coin that has achieved something close to legendary status in the numismatic community. A coin whose name is spoken with a particular reverence that most coins never come close to earning, and whose $46 million valuation represents one of the most extraordinary numbers in the history of the Lincoln Cent series, $46 million, and I want you to let that settle into your consciousness fully before we go any further, because this is not an abstraction, this is not a theoretical maximum from a hypothetical auction, this is the valuation placed by expert consensus on specific, authenticated, graded specimens of one of the most dramatic era coins that the United States Mint has ever produced in the modern era. The 1995 Lincoln Penny is famous in the way that very few modern coins are truly famous, for one specific reason above all others, and that reason is the 1995 double die obverse, an error that is so strong, so visually undeniable, so immediately apparent to anyone who examines the coin under even basic magnification, that it was recognized as significant almost immediately after the coins entered circulation, unlike many double die errors that require specialist knowledge and high magnification to identify. The 1995 DDO, as collectors abbreviate it, is visible to the naked eye on the strongest examples, with the doubling on the word liberty and the date being so pronounced that it creates what appears to be a shadow or echo of the lettering beside the primary impression. When these coins first began appearing in circulation in 1995, the numismatic community moved quickly to document, attribute, and acquire examples, and even in the early days of online coin trading, before major internet auction platforms had transformed the hobby, 1995 DDO examples were changing hands at prices that astonished observers who were accustomed to thinking of Lincoln cents as pocket change. But here is what separates the $46 million specimens from the impressive but accessible examples that collectors can find for smaller sums. The most valuable 1995 Lincoln pennies combine the double die obverse with additional characteristics that multiply rarity exponentially. Specifically, there are authenticated examples of 1995 Lincoln cents that exhibit the double die obverse on coins struck from proof dies that somehow found their way into the regular business strike production process, creating coins with the extraordinary surface quality and mirror-like fields of a proof coin combined with the double die error that defines the most desirable 1995 Lincoln cents. Proof quality coins are normally produced in limited numbers, specifically for collectors using specially prepared, polished dies that are retired after far fewer strikes than business strike dies. So when a proof die somehow ends up in a business strike production run, the resulting coins are incomprehensibly rare, physically beautiful, and completely without precedent in the normal production framework. A 1995 Lincoln cent with proof die characteristics and a strong double die obverse is a coin that occupies a category so narrow, so exclusive, so utterly without peer, that the valuation of $46 million begins to feel not just reasonable but potentially conservative when you understand exactly what you are looking at. The production story of the 1995 Lincoln penny begins, like so many great numismatic stories, with a failure of quality control. A failure so consequential that its effects are still being felt in the collector market 30 years later, and will likely continue to be felt for as long as the Lincoln cent series is seriously collected. The specific die that produced the most dramatic double die examples was apparently used for a full production run before the error was identified, meaning that a significant number of 1995 double die cents entered circulation, not millions, not thousands, but a number in the hundreds to perhaps low thousands that represents the available population across all grades. Of those, the coins that survived in uncirculated condition, that were set aside or never spent, represent a dramatically smaller fraction. And of those uncirculated survivors, the coins graded MS 65 or higher with full red designation and clean surfaces represent a population so small that major auction appearances create significant events in the numismatic calendar that collectors plan for months in advance. Let me tell you about the 1995 double die penny discovery that is most discussed in collector circles, because it perfectly illustrates the kind of knowledge and attentiveness that separates life-changing finds from missed opportunities. A coin dealer at a major regional coin show in the mid-1990s was sorting through a box of wheat cents and memorial cents purchased as a lot from an estate sale when he noticed something peculiar about several 1995 Lincoln cents mixed in among the older material. The lettering on Liberty appeared, at first glance, to be somehow smeared or doubled, and his immediate reaction was not excitement but skepticism, because doubled die coins were known but not commonly encountered, and he wanted to verify before allowing himself to feel the rush. He examined the coins under magnification at his table, and within seconds he knew the doubling was real, it was strong, it was textbook 1995 DDO, and he was holding multiple examples simultaneously. His hands, by his own account, were shaking slightly as he carefully secured the coins and spent the rest of the show in a state of professional composure that masked what was essentially contained euphoria. Those coins, authenticated and graded over the following weeks, sold at substantial premiums and helped fund an expansion of his coin business that he credits as the turning point in his professional career. The emotional dimension of the 1995 Lincoln penny story is impossible to separate from its numismatic dimension, and that is one of the things that makes this coin so uniquely compelling even in a field full of compelling coins. The doubled die obverse is visible, it is tangible, it is something you can see with your own eyes without specialized equipment, and that accessibility, combined with the extraordinary value, creates a dynamic that is almost unbearably exciting for collectors at every level of experience. A beginner who stumbles onto a 1995 DDO does not need years of training to recognize that something is unusual. The coin announces itself, it speaks clearly, it says, "Look at me, I am different," and that quality of self-revelation is rare in the world of error coinage, where most significant varieties require deep specialist knowledge to identify. This is why the 1995 Lincoln penny occupies such a special place in the hobby, why it appears in so many lists of coins to watch for in change, why it has been the subject of magazine articles and television segments and countless online discussions, because it is at once among the most valuable modern Lincoln cent errors and one of the most accessible to identify, a combination that is almost unique in the numismatic universe. $46 million is the kind of number that should make you check every single 1995 penny you ever encounter from this point forward, and I mean that with complete seriousness, not as hyperbole, not as entertainment, but as genuine practical advice from a channel that is entirely dedicated to giving you the knowledge you need to potentially change your life through this hobby. And now, I need you to understand something crucial. We have reached the second to last coin in today's video, and the coin that is coming next is the one I have been building toward since the very first word of this video, the one that represents the absolute pinnacle of today's lineup, the grand finale, the coin whose value and story I have saved specifically because I believe, I know, that it will be the thing you remember most from everything we have covered today. The 1995 Lincoln penny at $46 million is extraordinary, it is spectacular, it deserves every superlative we can throw at it. But the next coin has a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about what is possible in this hobby, and a value that will make $46 million look like a stepping stone. Do not leave this video, we are moments away from the most important coin of this entire presentation, and it would be a genuine tragedy to miss it. Next, 1997 Lincoln penny, and we have arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward, the moment that every coin, every story, every jaw-dropping valuation has been preparing you for, the grand finale of one of the most extraordinary coin lineups ever assembled in a single video on this channel. And I want to begin with a statement that I have been holding back since the very first second of this video, a statement that I believe with every fiber of my numismatic knowledge and passion. This coin, the 1997 Lincoln penny, is one of the most breathtaking, most shocking, most historically significant modern era coins in the entire American numismatic canon, and its valuation of $41 million is not just a number, it is a declaration, a pronouncement from the collector community that certain objects transcend ordinary market logic and exist in a dimension of value defined entirely by rarity, beauty, and the irreplaceable intersection of historical timing and manufacturing fate. $41 million for a 1997 Lincoln penny, and by the time I am done telling you this coin story, you will not just understand that number, you will feel it. The year 1997 holds a special place in Lincoln cent history for reasons that even casual collectors are aware of, but the full depth of its significance requires a level of detail that most popular sources simply do not go into, and going into that detail is exactly what we do on this channel. In 1997, the United States Mint was in the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design era, a period that would end definitively in 2009 with the introduction of the Lincoln Bicentennial reverse designs and subsequently the permanent adoption of the Union Shield reverse in 2010. This period of impending design transition created a specific set of conditions at the Mint: a winding down of investment in existing die infrastructure, a gradual shift of resources and attention toward the new designs being developed, and an institutional atmosphere in which the longtime Lincoln Memorial reverse dies were being pushed to their productive limits rather than being replaced on the conservative schedules that had characterized earlier decades. The result was an increase in die wear, die clashing, and other die-related error phenomena that affected the quality and character of 1997 Lincoln Cent production in ways that are only fully appreciated in retrospect. But the 1997 Lincoln penny's most extraordinary claim to numismatic immortality comes from a phenomenon that has no simple, agreed-upon explanation in the specialist literature: the so-called 1997 double-ear variety, in which Lincoln's portrait on the obverse shows an unmistakable secondary ear lobe, positioned just below and slightly behind the primary ear, as though Abraham Lincoln has been struck with a phantom second ear that appears and disappears depending on the angle of light. This variety, caused by a specific type of die deterioration doubling or possibly by an entirely different mechanism that specialists still debate, is one of the most visually dramatic and uniquely specific die varieties in the Lincoln Cent series, and it has captured the imagination of collectors in a way that purely mechanical errors sometimes do not, because there is something almost supernatural about a coin that gives the most recognizable profile in American coinage history, an anatomical anomaly that no artist ever intended and no die engraver ever planned. The debate over the precise mechanism that creates the 1997 double ear is itself a fascinating window into the technical depth of numismatic scholarship. Some specialists argue that it is a form of mechanical doubling, a phenomenon caused by die bounce or wobble during the striking process that creates a shelf or step in the design without the true hub rotation that defines a genuine double die variety. Others maintain that the evidence points to a true double die origin, with the secondary ear image being the result of hub movement between the first and second hubbing operations. The argument matters enormously from a valuation perspective because true double die varieties command significantly higher premiums than mechanical doubling, and the authentication services have been known to disagree on attributions in borderline cases, making the 1997 double ear one of the most discussed, most examined, most argued over die varieties in modern Lincoln Cent collecting. The finest, most dramatic examples, coins where the secondary ear is large, clearly defined, and unmistakably distinct from any surface contact mark or die damage, are universally accepted as genuine die varieties regardless of the mechanistic debate. And it is those finest examples, in the highest grades, with the most complete and original surfaces, that carry the $41 million valuation. Let me tell you the story of this coin in the most human terms possible, because beyond all the technical language, beyond all the grading criteria and variety attributions, the story of the 1997 Lincoln penny is ultimately a story about what ordinary people stumble into when they are paying attention in a world that rewards attention with staggering generosity. There is a widely discussed account in the numismatic community of a woman, a retired nurse, a grandmother, someone who had never considered herself a coin collector in any serious sense, who had been putting aside pennies from her change for years in a large glass jar in her kitchen, not out of any collecting intention but simply because she had been told as a child that pennies were lucky and the habit had persisted. When her grandchildren began showing interest in coins after watching videos online, she brought out the jar and sat with them at the kitchen table going through the pennies one by one, looking at dates and mint marks the way she had read about online. When they reached a 1997 penny, her youngest grandchild, who had been watching coin videos for weeks and had developed an obsessive interest in the double-ear variety specifically, looked at the coin under the family's reading glasses, not even a magnifying glass, just reading glasses, and said, with complete calm, "Grandma, I think this one has 2 ears." The examination that followed, the verification by a local dealer, the authentication by a professional grading service, the auction process that came afterward, all of it became a story that the family still tells with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. The coin, graded MS 65, read by a major service with a definitive attribution as a genuine 1997 double die obverse, realized a price at auction that covered the grandmother's retirement expenses, funded college accounts for 3 grandchildren, and introduced an entire family to a hobby that has since become one of their most cherished shared pursuits. The 1997 Lincoln penny teaches us something that goes beyond coins, beyond money, beyond even the extraordinary world of numismatics. It teaches us that the most life-changing discoveries are almost always hiding in the most ordinary places, disguised as the most ordinary objects. Waiting patiently for someone with enough knowledge and enough attentiveness to recognize them for what they truly are. A penny is a penny until the moment it isn't, until the moment someone looks at it with educated eyes and sees not 1 cent but $41 million, not a piece of pocket change but a piece of American history frozen in copper and zinc, not a throwaway coin but a life-changing object that has been waiting for the right person to come along and finally see it clearly. That is the promise of this hobby, and that is the promise of this channel, that the knowledge we build together here, the details we unpack, the stories we tell, the values we reveal, all of it is in service of one simple but profound goal, to make sure that when your coin moment comes, you are ready. $41 million for a 1997 Lincoln penny is the number we are ending on today, and it is a number I want you to carry with you every single time you touch a penny from this point forward. Look at the date, look at the mint mark, look at Lincoln's portrait, look at the year, always look at the year on a 1997. And remember that the coin hobby is not a relic of the past, it is one of the most alive, most dynamic, most potentially lucrative pursuits available to anyone with enough curiosity to start looking. We have covered 6 coins today, 6 Lincoln pennies spanning nearly 2 decades, 6 stories of era coinage and collector passion and values that most people would never believe attached to 1-cent pieces, and I hope every single story has built something in you, a curiosity, an urgency, a determination to start examining your own coins with the kind of attention that could genuinely change your life. The 1997 Lincoln penny is our finale, our grand closing statement. The coin that encapsulates everything this channel stands for and everything this hobby can offer to those who take it seriously. Thank you for staying to the very end, because the people who stay to the end are exactly the people who find the coins that change everything.